Happy Monday, everyone. We have a new segment here called Meta Mondays here at the Hodl Fandom, where I analyze the past week's metadata to see if there's any interesting stats or trends. In case you missed it, Ecomi recently announced the release of their metadata. The original data provided on IMX only showed wallets, generically the NFTs in those wallets, and what they were doing. That was it. We didn't know what exactly they were buying, what they were selling. It would be nice to know things like what are the whales doing, what are they stacking, and what are they dumping. Now we are given the data on what exactly is being bought and sold. There is a list of criteria on the article Ecomi released, and you can confirm that on Mutascan. Now there are some limitations. Now the metadata is rolling out very, very slowly. The old items largely have not been updated, and even the new items such as new mints and new transfers can be spotty at times. It's like they're using an old dial-up modem and their sister keeps picking up the phone while they're uploading. They did say this rollout will take some time, which is fine. It's just something to keep in mind. One last note before I get into the data, Meta Mondays might not be every single Monday. If there's nothing interesting, I won't bore you with a video. If my findings can fit in 130 characters or less, I'll just tweet it out. So let's get into some interesting things here. Now this is going to sound surprising because of the other numbers I see floating around, but when I look at the wallet holdings, to be in the top 1%, you only need 189 Veve NFTs. If you want to be in the top 5%, you only need 38 collectibles, with some comics hovering just around $2. That's like $80 to get into the top 5%. Now here's my interpretation of this. The fact that it only takes $80 to put you in the top 5% of collectible holdings, and if you believe Veve with all of its big partnerships, with all of its future offerings will be big, then we are immensely early. Now this doesn't account for MCP, and that will be an incentive to buy certain collectibles, and not just the cheapest comics, so keep that in mind. Let's move on to active users here, and I've defined this as somebody who has either minted or purchased a collectible on the secondary market within the past week, and that number shot up quite a bit versus midweek when I was looking at this earlier. We had 18,552 unique wallets purchasing something off on the drop or off the secondary market within the last week. Midweek, that was sitting at around 9,000, so clearly people were after some of those New York Comic-Con drops. The biggest demographic were these small wallets participating, and then we had a big group of medium-sized wallets that had increased activity. But for the most part, it was the wallets holding 10 collectibles or less. That got me thinking, what are these smaller wallets doing? The ones that make a large proportion of the participants in the secondary and primary markets. Now, I compared the wallet size to who was selling and then who was buying that collectible on the secondary market. A large majority of activity involves small wallets selling to a bigger wallet. 65% of transfers on the secondary market had the dolphins and the whales feeding off the krill. Now, when we break this down by rarity, there was a big proportion of those sales from small to big that were of the ultra rare tier. Now, that might be specific to the drops this week, as it looks like the main driver was the James Bond posters, which I believe were all ultra rare. So let's put these handful of charts together and form an opinion. Now we have the small wallets heavily participating on the drop and then selling to the bigger wallets. The bigger wallets are then accumulating the ultra rares. And again, that might be a function of what was dropped this week versus that specific rarity. So what are these small wallets doing? They're gambling. And the big wallets are just accumulating. The small wallets might be going for a special serial number, and for the James Bond drop, maybe it was a serial number with a number 7 in it, for 007. And then they're hoping to cash in, to win a lottery and sell it for a windfall. Let's move on to the whales now, and there are some definitive patterns here. For this analysis, I've defined a whale as somebody that has over 1,000 collectibles. On the drop, the whales clearly had a target. They went after a daredevil. By far, this had the highest proportion of whale participation on the drop this week. On the secondary market, they also went after Daredevil as a number 1 target, although it didn't win by as big of a lead as off the drop, but still number 1. On the sales side, what were they dumping? Well, I wouldn't say they were dumping anything. Yes, Daredevil was the number 1 here as well, but only 9 were sold by the whale wallets. Now here are my thoughts on this. Daredevil is an immensely popular character. His comic is very, very popular in the collecting world and sells for a pretty good amount. In terms of catalysts, he just made his first appearance in the MCU in She-Hulk, and he will be having his own series on Disney Plus eventually, which is a tough act to follow because his Netflix series was really, really good. Now you have his first appearance, his FA on Veve. This makes sense. They're betting on a character with multiple things going for him. Now, I've said this many times, I'm not really buying anything right now, but when I do, I think the Daredevil might be one of the first things I just pick up. So let's put this all together for the first Meta Monday. What's the story the data tells us? First impressions is that you don't need a lot of collectibles to be in the top percentile right now as a Veve collector. And that tells me we are very, very early still. The whales are then stacking for the future as we clearly see patterns of them accumulating. The small wallets, well, they're gambling. Maybe they see a big sale on special mints, but overall, this is not a profitable strategy for most. That's why whales are whales. They are playing the long game and trying not to win the lottery. Swim with the whales. The whales are also betting on Daredevil, which does have a lot of catalysts going for him, so that kind of makes sense. That's a sharp bet. If Veve does grow, it might be a good idea to grab one of those and just hold. Overall participation was stronger than I thought, although Comic-Con probably has something to do with it. Although having a booth with Marvel does help for sure, and maybe this is a taste of what an uptick in marketing can do. It'll be interesting to see next week what the data shows when there is no major event. Now, I'm not a programmer, but I do love a good challenge. As I continue to figure out how to work with this API, Meta Mondays will continue to evolve, so thank you so much for joining episode number 1. Have an awesome week, and I'll see you in the next video.